Verses, presented by Eventide Entertainment.
Hello everyone, lovely Lillian. My name is Robert Yetter, and I welcome you to another episode of Nerd Verses, here on the Eventide Entertainment podcast feed. Now last week, Sword Art Online and Dot Hack battled it out, and Dot Hack absolutely decimated SAO. It was 3-zip. And as I explained in the episode, that doesn't mean that SAO is bad. I love SAO, actually, but Dot Hack is just better, and that's more of an objective statement, as I try and do on this show. There's actually a lot of SAO haters out there, I've noticed. If you look at, all the forums, or if you look at, Kiss Anime comments and stuff like that, there's a lot of people bringing SAO down. I don't like that. I don't know why that is. Anyway, that was a fun episode. Go check it out if you have not already. Now, today we have episode 7. So this has to be an extra special episode to commemorate the number. And if you're wondering, 7 is in reference to my stage name, Citizen 7, so the number is very special. So for episode 7, I thought, why not talk about something that I have an unhealthy passion for? And that something is Evangelion. I'm obsessed with Evangelion. If you actually look around the room that I'm sitting in right now, you'll see quite a number of things related to Evangelion. I've also done a fair amount of research on the internet, about Evangelion lore. So I have a pretty detailed knowledge of that. I wouldn't say the most detailed knowledge, but I could hold my own. So there's really no other way to put it other than I am obsessed. Now, originally for this episode, I was going to compare and contrast the Gundam franchise with the Evangelion franchise. And I thought about it, and I started to write some stuff out. I was like, Evangelion is one of my favorite things ever. Not just one of my favorite animes, just one of my favorite things, period. And I realized that it would be entirely impossible for me to stay objective or to really give any light of day to Gundam, because I could talk about Evangelion for forever. Now, I like Gundam too. And it's Evangelion and Gundam are probably the two top mech animes, mech franchises, not just anime, ever. But I just, again, I don't think I could stay objective. So instead of doing the classic format of the show that everyone is used to, I wanted to take this episode and really just dote over Evangelion. Because a nerd would do that, right? It's like nerd versus obsession. So I'm going to discuss some of my favorite things about the anime, favorite characters, the interesting imagery, symbolism, interesting differences between the series and the rebuild, and maybe some hopes for the new movie. And whatever else may come up. I'm pretty much just gonna spitball this episode. I don't know if I will actually get to all of that, but I'm pretty much just I'm gonna dote, I'm gonna dote on it. So, Evangelion, the series was called Neon Genesis Evangelion, came out in the 90s, and when this came out, it was kind of a revolution. The writing and the art style, the animation, it's credited as revitalizing anime, for Japan in general. And to this day, it remains probably one of the most beloved animes of all time. And you can really see that with just how far-reaching the anime is, you know, it's, I think, one of the most marketed animes of all time, one of the most marketed franchises. There's always some cosplay, figures, everything. It's always there. It's permeated, the Japanese culture and American culture. And with the rebuild, you know, the 3 more recent movies that have come out, it really, has stayed for a long time. So you've had the original series in the 90s, and then you have, you know, the rebuild. And so it's pretty much been a driving force for a long time now. So speaking of all the merchandise, yeah, like I said earlier, there's a fair amount of it that I have. You know, the figures, I've got posters, wall scrolls, clothing. I mean, there's just a ton of options. If you just search Evangelion, you know, anything online, you can use like a big one is like AliExpress or Wish, or really even Amazon. Amazon does a lot of, overseas type stuff. It normally takes a long time for the stuff to get to you on those websites, but it's definitely worth it to get stuff, you know, pretty much straight from Japan or straight from China. Now, to give you a little bit of, you know, a little bit of a plot for the series, it's essentially about a boy who is forced to pilot an Evangelion unit, and that unit's called Unit 1. Now, he's forced to pilot this unit because he is, has the greatest link to the unit. Now, you learn that, his mother's soul is actually, within Unit 1. And so that's why he's able to pilot it, but that's also why, you know, the emotional link between them, you know, Shinji doesn't have his mother anymore. The emotional link between them, enables that Unit 1 to pretty much act on its own, when Shinji gets really upset. And, but, you know, that's delving a little deeper than it needs to be. So essentially he's piloting this Unit 1, and they're battling these, I don't want to call them creatures, they're more like entities. They're called angels. And angels are entities that they're trying to make their way to, this kind of underground base, nerve headquarters, where they're actually, they're holding one of the, well, when you just try to give a simple synopsis of this, it's really not that easy. I'm finding that out right now. But they have pretty much hostage this being, and this being is, one of the progenitors, if you will, of humankind. You have two types of beings. You have, beings of Adam, the fruit of life, pretty much the immortal beings. And so those are the angels. And then you have the beings of Lilith, on the fruit of knowledge, and those are what are called Lilin. And so that's why I call all of you Lilin, because the Lilin are just people. They're not they don't have immortality. And so it's said when an angel comes into contact with Lilith, Lilith is the being that they're holding beneath the earth, and they're, pretty much bleeding this being dry of what they call LCL. And so if an angel comes into contact with Lilith, pretty much an impact will happen. And an impact is essentially like a major destruction. Now, this impact would be the major destruction, and it would turn everyone into LCL, and essentially individuality would cease to exist. It's a very complex plot. There's a lot of imagery and symbolism that's very religious. Of course, you have the angels, and you have reference to the three wise men. Those are the supercomputers that they use there at Nerve headquarters. You have, a lot of crosses all the time, like even when an angel is firing a weapon of some sort or transforming in some fashion, there's always this symbol of the cross that appears, or if they're eliminated, the cross is there. And in reading about that, actually, the director of the series has stated that it was more of really just an aesthetic thing, rather than, kind of making a direct religious, comparison. But he thought it was just cool, essentially. I don't know if I believe that fully, but I'll take the master at his word, right? Who am I to argue with that? He's a genius. So there's this contention out there that Shinji is a really terrible main character. And I don't really see it that way. I have this long-standing argument with my wife that the one character, Asuka, is actually way more whiny than Shinji. Everyone says that Shinji's just, a whiny little boy and he needs to get over it. But if you actually stop and think about what he's meant to do, it's really terrifying. And, and he really feels like he doesn't have any support, He only gets glimpses of support from people around him. But it's really not the type of support that he really is striving for. And of course he's got, sexual feelings mixed up in that, feelings about his father. So there's a lot of stuff, rolling around in his mind, and then he's told, like, you have to pretty much save the world. So the major turning point for Shinji is when in the series, and I'll kind of explain how this is different in the rebuild. In the series, they build what's called the dummy system into Unit 1. And this is essentially a system where if Shinji refused to fight, the dummy system would take over and fight for him, control the Unit 1, without Shinji. And so there comes this time where an angel happens, a unit actually turns into an angel, and there's actually one of his schoolmates piloting the Eva unit turned angel. And so once Shinji figures that out, he refuses to destroy it, and so boop, his father turns on the dummy system, and the Eva Unit 1 pretty much goes crazy. and decimates the angel. And Shinji is left, thinking that he actually was made to kill his friend, And so after that, he pretty much leaves NERV. Yes, he was whiny, whatever, but it's a lot of stuff, Your father forces you to essentially kill someone in his eyes, or hurt someone very badly. And Shinji wanted no part of it. But he comes around because there's a grander scheme at work here. But that really was, again, that showed him that the level of support that he has is actually not there. That really he's kind of just, a warm body filling in the unit, and that his father has really no kind of love for him at all, which is pretty much true. His father only really cares about Yui, Shinji's mother. And so that's where the huge crux of the story is Gendo. He is working as part of the Human Instrumentality Project with a group called Seele. Now, the key though is that Gendo and Seele have different ideas about what's going to happen when human instrumentality actually becomes a thing. Because Seele wants to essentially ascend into pretty much godliness. But Gendo wants to go along with her plan until the very last minute and use Unit 1 as a conduit to Yui. All he wants to do is just see Yui again. So then that brings you into the character Rei, who is essentially kind of a Yui clone. So yeah, you can see that there's just a ton of levels to this anime and to this story. And with the rebuild, let me talk a little bit about that. The rebuild was something that happened. It's a series of movies that basically refreshed, changed a few things from the series from the 90s, and actually added on to the story. There was a lot of hate around the ending of the original series, until the movie The End of Evangelion came out, which is hailed as one of the greatest anime movies of all time. Go watch the series and then watch The End of Evangelion, and your mind will be absolutely destroyed, blown to bits. And, so the creator, he wanted to pretty much, expand on Evangelion and kind of bring it up to date with the animation, kind of, fix some stuff that didn't really work in the series, but was just put in there anyway, for budget or time reasons. And so it's a really good refresher, but there's some weird differences too. The main difference you see between the series and the rebuild is how the Evas look. You'll notice that the Evangelion units are not as skinny, not as lanky looking. They have the body stature more of a human. You'll notice a little difference in their color schemes. The biggest one is Unit 0 changes color completely. Unit 1 adds a lot more green to the purple. Unit 2 is the color scheme's mostly unchanged. And you have kind of a condensement of the series, if you will, in the first two films. You don't see as many angels. and there's a couple plot lines that are different. Like I mentioned earlier in the series, Shinji is pretty much forced to destroy the angel that his friend is piloting, and that's what forces him to leave Nerve. But in the rebuild, it's actually Asuka who's piloting that Evangelion turned angel. And so there's kind of some very little details, not really super important, but I think that the fact that they made Asuka the pilot rather than, I believe it was Toji, his friend from school, it just, cause he's got the deeper connection to Asuka, right? And so if he was, it would make more sense, I guess. It's a little bit more impactful if he hurts Asuka rather than if he hurts Toji. And I know that's a weird way to think about it, but Shinji has more of a connection to Asuka, if that makes sense. 'Cause he's also an Eva pilot, all this stuff. He's got the weird crush vibes with that one, even though all she does all day long is just berate him for being stupid. Stupid Shinji. That's her favorite line. Stupid Shinji. Idiot Shinji. Now, some of my favorite things about this anime is just the writing, the how it progresses, and how the writing actually makes you feel what's the word for it? Just how big of a deal that defeating these angels is. But it also mixes in just very down to earth human philosophy. And so that's one thing. The writing's very good. And in the rebuild, you actually get kind of an extension of the original series, and so it actually goes past Third Impact, whereas that's where the series kind of ended. And then you had the end of Evangelion. So the writing, sorry, I know I'm jumping around here, but it's hard to it's hard to keep all my thoughts in line when it's Evangelion. I'm sorry. So I love the writing. The animation, especially in the rebuild, is top notch. They use a lot more computer animation, which is okay. It blends nicely with the original kind of hand drawn looking stuff. And just the action sequences. Like if you look at like Evangelion 3, the movie, it's called 3.33 here in the United States, I believe. It's essentially 3.0, the movie. Anyway, if you look at just like the opening sequence of that, where Asuka's in space, there's kind of just that gives you a sense of really how much time they spent on just making it look really good. Like that whole movie is just the prime example of how to animate stuff, really. It's the level of detail. It must have taken forever. I know it must have taken forever. It's crazy. So yeah, the writing, the animation, there's really this sense of being able to relate to these characters. They're all so unique. And they're all in this weird position, and they all have to kind of work together, but there's all these conflicts and, love triangles or, hidden motives. That's probably, along with the writing and the animation, that kind of character building is really what sets it apart from other anime, I think. So, what else is there to talk about? We talked about the symbolism, some of my favorite characters, some of my favorite things. some differences between the series and the rebuild. The new movie. Yeah. So, it's been announced for a long time, and if you watch to the end of, Evangelion 3.0, you'll see kind of this little snippet of what's supposed to be called Evangelion 3.0 plus 1.0, or essentially Evangelion 4, the fourth and final movie for this rebuild series. And at the end of 3.0, you're given this little snippet. It's kind of you see this weird, fusion unit between Unit, 8 and Unit 2. So it's like half pink and half, red. And so you get a little bit of a sneak peek. Now, the director, I always butcher his name, Hideaki Anno, he stated that might not be the actual, what is going to be in the final product of the fourth movie. That was kind of, just something to throw in there, I think, to get people excited about the fourth one. And also, it's been taking a long time to get the fourth movie. The director, he stated that after 3.0, like, he was really just, Evangelion was his life for so long, and he was kind of burnt out, creatively. And so, he pretty much stepped away from it for a while. And he went on to do some other stuff, one of which was the Godzilla movie that came out, not the 2014 one, but this one came out, was it this year? Yeah, I think it was this year. And so he's been working on stuff, and so he's actually stated that now that Godzilla is done, he's going to go back to working on Evangelion 4.0, and he stated that he is working on it actively right now. And so it shouldn't be too long. And another thing to be excited about, too, is that in the past, when anime was being made, it would get released in Japan, and then it would get released in the US like a year later, But now they're doing pretty much, and you see this a lot with the video games now, where they're getting pretty much simultaneous Japan and US releases. And the same's happening with the anime. So, I think we won't have to wait as long after it's actually out to get it in America. The fourth one, the third one just took forever. I think it was over a year. I feel like it was, until like that 3.33 Blu-ray came out. So we have that to look forward to. So it won't be too much longer after it's actually done and released in Japan that we will probably get it. So man, Evangelion is really cool. If you like, it's a mech anime, but with a different flavor, right? There's still the really cool mech action, but it's less about that and more about these characters, but they're all so tied in intricately with, the mechs, the units. And it's just the way that they weave the story. It's very touching. It's very engrossing. And the more that I think about it and the more that I research little details about it, the more I become obsessed with it. There's so much more things that I could say about anything that I've talked about today, especially when it comes to little details about the plot, and how things are connected and stuff like that. So it's really just best to experience this. You want to first experience the series, and then move to the end of Evangelion. Don't worry about death and rebirth. So the end of Evangelion, and then move on to the rebuild. And you might be kind of taken aback by the rebuild because the pacing is a lot different. And, some of the characters are actually, they act a little bit differently than from the series. The series has kind of a lot more slice of life stuff, a little bit of Ichi too. And that kind of is what drives the series being a little bit longer than the rebuild movies. They definitely have a lot less of that, interactions with Pen, stuff like that. So that's the order that you should watch it in: the series, End of Evangelion, and then the rebuild, and then just, I know you're gonna wanna just go on the internet and go crazy with the research. There's a lot of different outlets to look at stuff about Evangelion, different, theories and forums and stuff like that. So go soak it all in. It's so much fun. It's such an engrossing series. I hope everyone enjoys it as much as I do. You don't have to become as obsessed with it as I am, but just, if you ever are on the internet, and you want to have a good conversation about Evangelion, hit me up. Alright, so I think I've doted enough on Evangelion. Something that has consumed a good portion of my life and my wallet. Worth it. So, yes. Everyone, Lilin, I thank you for joining me today on this episode of me just kind of rambling, I think. Sometimes it's hard for me. I get excited again. It's hard. I just love it so much. I know I skipped around, but thank you for sticking with me. I haven't decided on my next episode, but I promise that it will be a little bit more than me just rambling again. So thank you. Everyone have a nice day. We'll see you next time on Nerd Versus, brought to you by Eventide Entertainment. Go check out all the other podcasts on the feed. And special shout out to theravenhour.wordpress.com. Everyone go check out some poetry on there. Oh, another thing I should mention is, my album that's coming out on Thanksgiving. It's called Curios, and it's pretty much it's a remaster collection of some of the music that I've made from 2011 to 2015. So go check that out. It's going to be featuring a couple songs, with my good friend Martyr. It's going to be a lot of fun. And let me tell you, these tracks, they sound great. I've remastered, about half of them so far, and they are sounding really good. I think you guys are going to be, blown away. Anywho, we'll see y'all next time. Peace.
There's nothing quite as satisfying as a good conversation with intelligent company. Join comedian Don Smith every week as he sits down and talks with comedians, actors, filmmakers, writers, and everyday schmoes. It's The Life with Don Smith, Wednesdays at noon on 106.9 FM, and now available on the Eventide Entertainment podcast feed every Friday on Spreaker, YouTube, and iTunes. Wednesdays on Eventide, Robert Yetter and Mike Shea sit down and throw albums at each other, talking about them, picking them apart, ripping them a new one. All different artists, all different genres, all different levels of suckage. It's Track Record, Wednesdays at 9 a.m. on the Eventide podcast feed. For more information, go to eventideent.com. Are you into making music, videos, or podcasts? Are you a local comedic talent in need of some much-needed publicity? Are you a behind-the-scenes professional interested in audio-video production, graphic design, and public relations? Eventide Entertainment is actively seeking talents, clients, and professionals to help our business grow into something truly special. And we want you to be one of those. For more information, go to facebook.com/Eventide Entertainment or send us an email at eventideent@gmail.com.